まだまだいろんなところに行きたい。
もっと一緒にいたい。
その日、私は先輩に一目惚れをしました。
So I've been watching Whisper Me a Love Song, a love story between first year Himari Kino and guitar playing third year Yori Yasunagi. As a manga reader, I was excited to see the SS girls brought to life, but found myself let down by the production quality. Inconsistent character models and bare bones animation do little to capture the viewer's attention. Even in the midpoint climax, the band performance only goes for a minute or two and repeats sequences. In other performances, we cut them off or we just miss microphones. This isn't unique to Whisper Me a Love Song. There's simply too many anime every year to give each one mind-blowing animation, storyboarding, and the refinement those stories deserve. So you often end up with very boring shows to look at with little visual intrigue. But Whisper Me a Love Song does something a little different to make up for its shortcomings. It plays with the overall composition. When you watch an episode of anime, it exists typically as a 1920 by 1080 composition, for lack of a better phrase. Everything you see exists in this box, and most shows are happy to operate within those borders, but Whisper Me a Love Song likes to take that box and mess with it. They zoom away from the edges in between scenes. They'll isolate the characters into smaller rectangles. They'll cut to black during tense dialogue. These techniques break up the visual monotony of the unimpressive visuals. But is there more that I'm missing? Every time I see one of these effects, I often ask myself if there's a particular intent behind it. What does something like this accomplish? Here I take a cue from my old school days. When I don't know how or why something is done, I look towards other examples and see if I can apply what works there to my current problem. Arriving in the same season, you have Dungeon Meshi applying these same techniques with aplomb. Shrinking the composition to highlight Marcial's brain ceasing all function, or zooming in to headline Marcial's deadpan face. These both demonstrate the value of comedic timing, where waiting a beat after a joke gives the audience a pause to catch up. By coupling it with a simple edit, you maintain some level of visual engagement without sacrificing timing. And the less sophisticated editing techniques also elevate the absurdity in Marcial's reactions. There are also changes in opacity, which can alter the ambience of a scene. In one instance, the cast is overlaid with the burning candle to create a more ethereal or somber atmosphere in preparation of a fight with ghosts. It's remarkable how simple these edits are. I can do some of them myself, but that simplicity belies Meshi's strong sense of direction and timing. Dungeon Meshi isn't afraid to make these changes because it can keep you engaged in spite of the drastic composition alterations. Horror Me a Piece is another show that willingly plays with the dimensions of its overall composition. Episode 4 features several scenes and transitions that reduce that 1920 by 1080 box to a much smaller frame. Some of it is just cute. When Hori reads Miyamura's phone, the composition is cropped to a small vertical rectangle while the text from his phone appears behind her. By mimicking the phone screen, it gives a clever blend of Hori in the foreground and her POV in the background. The same cropped shape appears when Sengoku recounts how he ended up hiding his girlfriend from his father. The black bars now serve to emphasize Sengoku's discomfort and not only failing to tell his father about his relationship on Christmas, but also his fear of the bugs she keeps in her room. The composition now feels trapped, and other objects sliding into the foreground only accentuate how cramped Remy's room feels. Despite sharing the same composition shape, these scenes are quite disparate. It's a great reminder that there's more than one way to interpret an artistic choice. Within the same episode, there are also these smaller square cuts of the composition that are scattered throughout. Though there isn't any narrative reasoning behind this directing choice, they fit the theme of the episode, which covers a few skits that are centered around the Hori family's kotatsu. Each skit is preceded by this quick kotatsu-shaped composition that focuses on, well, nothing in particular. It's a utilitarian way to connect these otherwise distinct cuts while showcasing the director's personal style. It's certainly charming, but it also draws the viewer's attention, purposefully mind you, on the omnibus-like nature of the episode. Other episodes in Horror Me a Piece often have these skits that don't always fit neatly with one another, but these inserts at the beginning help the continuity and flow of the episode, like a well-segmented timeline. While not altering the shape of the composition, Whisper Me a Love Song sometimes likes to break up the scene into smaller rectangles. It's reminiscent of manga paneling, where the story is told in groups of panels on each page. For excellent implementation of manga-style visuals in anime, we can look at Kyousougiga. Someone recently shared with me an interview featuring director Rie Matsumoto and character designer Yuki Hayashi. In it, Rie Matsumoto discusses how her use of framing intentionally emulates manga panels for both style and function. She specifically references the ability of these panels to transcend space. Placing characters in these panels allows them to be closer and in frame without having them be in proximity of one another in the narrative. It mitigates the chance of pulling the viewer out of immersion by utilizing what she called manga panel logic. In a manga or a comic, the gap between panels encompasses both small gaps and large canyons, but the characters can still communicate because those panels act like jump cuts when you read one panel at a time. So when characters are far from one another, you can fit all their reactions in one frame. When characters are close, you can imply distance. Kyousougiga makes use of this natural reading style to enhance the delivery of dialogue no matter where the cast is located. One potential concern with this style of editing is how it risks pulling the viewer out of their immersion. Seeing the composition manipulated in these ways can ruin the illusion and make it difficult to reinvest emotionally into the story, but this weakness can be parlayed into a strength. The second season of Gunslinger Girl dramatically changes many things from season 1, like its character designs. One of these stylistic changes comes in the form of how it conducts its flashbacks. The composition shrinks to a slightly smaller size, leaving the rest of the space empty. While it may be distracting for some, the editing here establishes two realities, the present and the past. I mean, think about it. How many times have you watched a show and not realized you were in the middle of a flashback? With this simple edit, the viewer can swap between these immersive narratives where they are clearly delineated from one another. The show shrinking also provides a strong buffer compared to a jump cut. It gives time to ease the viewer into the past like a dream/flashbacks transition. A shaking camera effect is also applied to provide a little more natural or unrehearsed feeling. It makes the flashback resemble more of someone's recounting of events. Playing around your composition can actually help the viewer better understand the story instead of completely pulling them out of it. Funnily enough, the director for Gunslinger Girl 2, Akira Mano, is the current director for Whisper Me a Love Song, so maybe I'm not giving this show quite enough credit. And this brings us back to the beginning of the video. Do the compositional changes reveal a stronger direction than its visuals suggest in Whisper Me a Love Song? Safe to say, I think Akira Mano has done their best to make do with what they have. One could argue that the shrink and fade transitioning brings a stronger sense of closure to the current scene and smooths over the jump to a new setting or group of characters. These multiple perspectives of Yori hammer home how sternly she's contemplating, and the panels create a sense of time passing. That sense of time is also used when Kino moves to meet Yori on the rooftop. The panels gap the distance between her classroom and the roof, but staying on the same frame gives weight and time to Kino's monologue. When Kino exclaims how lucky Yori's partner will be, the composition changes shape to focus on Yori's clenched fist. It could be interpreted as Yori hiding her feelings and feeling uncomfortable with Kino's comments. If you're willing to be open-minded, there's plenty of ways to interpret the editing decisions in this show. The production staff are not just trying to give diversity in the shot composition, but doing whatever they can to strengthen the show's narrative. Not every decision is as strongly motivated, like the occasional use of Dutch angles during relatively innocuous conversations. But even if there isn't some grand plan behind all those composition edits, it's certainly better than staring at the plethora of shows that refuse to do anything. And given the rumors and delays associated with the series, they need to pull out all the tricks in the book to keep the show afloat. While it lacks some ambition, Whisper Me a Love Song deserves some recognition for trying to keep you visually engaged and doing so in an economical fashion.